Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Play The Adventures of Batman and Robin 1994. In the last part we went through the Scarecrow and Two-Face's stage as well as Riddler's, and now it's time for the Gauntlet, the final stage in the game. Batman, something terrible has happened. The Joker has escaped with the others from Arkham Asylum. They want you to meet them at the old warehouse by Gotham Harbor. This is serious. They're trying to lure you into a trap. Maybe so, but I can't let them get away. I suppose not. Best of luck, Batman. You don't really need to bring in anything extra for this stage in specific. If anything, you might want to reduce the amount of things you have to just damaging items. But by and large, prepare for a gauntlet indeed, because the gauntlet itself is largely a boss rush. Very stupid of you to show your face again, Batman. I'm going to pay you back for all the grief you've given me. I think I'll send your bird back to its nest. By and large, the bosses here in the boss rush are unchanged, and while usually I would speed something like this up, that would make this part too short, and I didn't like the idea of making the previous part upwards of 40 minutes long, even with the speed up, so hence why we're in this video alone, we're not speeding it up. With that said, let's use this opportunity to finish up going over the game's development staff as listed on Moby Games. We finished up the cleanup section last time, so now it's time for the manual design people. There's Hiromi Sumida and Kevin O'Donoghue. Sumida started on Cosmic Wars graphic design on the NES. They eventually did the packaging for Kid Dracula. They did some visuals for TMNT3 Manhattan Project, rather. But they also did product design and package design for Contra 3 and Hyperstone Heist, which is why I almost started saying that. They did the manual as well for Batman the Animated Series on the Game Boy. They did this the next year alongside Biker Mice from Mars. I'll give you a big dose of my special gas. You should learn some new tricks, Scarecrow. Their final project was on the final round on the PlayStation as a product designer. Ken O'Donoghue, on the other hand, started with Simpsons on DOS as the instruction manual writer, and they did the same for House of Weirdness, also on DOS for The Simpsons. Manual for Mission Impossible on DOS, Batman Returns on DOS, Animaniacs on Genesis and Super Nintendo. They also did package manual design for. Their most recent games are Contra Legacy of War on the Saturn for the manual, and we're in the cast for Lethal Enforcers 1 and 2 on the PlayStation. Next up, we got the HQ IBD staff, which is a slight subsidiary staff, I believe. Got two people listed there, Haruhiko Inaba and Jeremy Blaustein. Inaba, they started on Batman the Animated Series on the Game Boy on the Overseas Department alongside a Tournament Fighter on the SNES in the Special Thanks section. They worked on this the next year alongside Wacky Sports Challenge for Time 2 Adventures, but they eventually became part of the translation team for a lot of games like Suikoden on the PS1. Be careful coming up here, by the way, because as we approach the end of this room, we're gonna hit a wall, but you want to make sure you stay away from the wall, because the second after you get too close to it, Clayface charges on through. Batman, I will smash you. I won't let anyone stand in my way. Clayface, you really think you can beat me so easily? Clayface is a new fight here. He can just throw square projectiles across the way, he can squirt along the road like that, which is pretty easy to get around, but his main thing is going to be throwing a spread shot you can just duck under if you're right next to him. Get as close as you can, but make sure you're also being wary that you can move at any second, because he can just roll across the screen, and when he does that, he doesn't always roll one way and then back. Sometimes he'll do it multiple times in a row, or maybe he'll just stop at the one roll. Also note, if memory serves in this stage, you have to do all this in one life, so be very careful. There's only one health pickup along the way, too, to make this even worse. Going back to the staff, though, after Suikoden, Haruhiko Inaba eventually became an assistant director for Azure Dreams on the PS1 and was still listed in the Special Thanks for Suikoden 2. They were recording director for Silent Hill 1 and casting coordinator for Silent Hill 2 as well. And into the New Millennium, they eventually worked on things like Saint Seiya Hades on PS2 as a special thanks mention. Star Ocean, Second Evolution, and First Departure, they were on localization supervision. Same with FF4 After Years, Crystal Chronicles. Trine 3, they were the director outright, funnily enough. Catwoman, why are you here? Batman, I don't want to fight you, but I won't let anyone stand in my way. Come the more recent years, though, they were senior director for Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis as Harry Inaba. Diablo 2 Resurrected, they were senior director. Star Ocean Divine Force, they were senior director. And Sky Tales for the Nintendo Switch, last year they were on the language leads. Jeremy Blaustein, though, started on this game, period. They also would work on Animaniacs as a special thanks mention, Sparkster on the SNES, they were an advisor, Snatch for the CD, they were a supervisor. Metal Gear Solid, they translated the software manual. Dragon Quest VII, they were on translation. Silent Hill 2, they were a supervisor/translator. Ape Escape 2, they were an English voice recording director. Silent Hill 3, same deal, basically. All the way into the modern era where they work on things like English translation for Jump Force. Or Silent Hill The Short Message earlier this year, they were on translation and Q&A. But their name might also sound a little familiar to some avid dub fans for anime in the early 2000s. I'll talk about that in a moment, though, because we got another new boss.
I'll put you to rest here.
Man-Bat doesn't talk in the cartoon, what's that? Man-Bat's kind of rough, though, mostly for his charges toward the screen that can still damage you. His sweeps across are pretty easy to take advantage of to do extra damage to his very low health pool, but the depth perception on his charge is what really sucks here. Yeah, Jeremy Blaustein's name might sound slightly familiar to some people familiar with old anime dubs. That's because he is actively the younger brother of late Pokemon voice actress Maddie Blaustein, which is a fun little connection there. Next up in the cast, we got the licensing manager, who is Kathy McCarthy, who seemingly was probably just a licensing person for Warner Brothers because they also worked on both versions of the Animaniacs game in this exact generation. Afterwards, we reach the three special thanks. Hideaki Hata, Kazuhiro Namba, and Kengo Nakamura. Time for the final boss first.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to introduce your favorite and mine, the one and only, the Joker. Sorry to keep you waiting. Today I'd like to bring to you, Betsy, some good old-fashioned pain. Are you ready?
Surrender before it's too late, Joker. Alright, final boss begins, and after the gauntlet you've gone through, they made this very easy. The Joker's only attack in this phase is dashing at you with the jetpack. You can just turn left, punch, turn right, punch, and you'll be fine. Later on in the health bar, you do lose the jetpack. At that point, though, it just effectively becomes the same boss that we fought back in the first stage, where you can punch him, run backwards, punch him again, run backwards, blah, blah, blah. Laughably easy, yes, but again, I think it's because they realized you went through so much to get here because of the gauntlet, so I'm kind of thankful. So, those people in special thanks. Hideaki Hata only has 4 credits to their name. They're in the special thanks section for this, but they're an animation producer for Dancing Blade Kate no Momotenshi, alongside Genso Suiko Gaiden, Volume 1 and 2 on the PlayStation over in Japan. Kazuhiro Namba started on Crackdown on the NES. They eventually worked on Gradius the Interstellar Assault on the Game Boy for the package design. Hyperstone Heist, they were a product designer. TMNT 3, Radical Rescue for the Game Boy. Tournament Fighter on Super Nintendo, they were graphic designer and visual editor there. Sparkster on the SNES, they were package designer. All the way forward, they started working on a lot of sports games come the late 90s. With some notable things like Legacy of Darkness, they were a producer for Castlevania back in 99 and all that. Otherwise, their most recent releases are Beatmania 2DX, Ninth Style on the PS2, and Coded Arms for the PSP. Kengo Nakamura, to wrap things up, started with Jailbreak and Jack on the arcade. They were supervisor on the Simpsons arcade game, but a lot of their games are special thanks to producer up until the turn of the millennium, in which case they were a coordinator for things like Ninja 5.0, producer for TMNT on the PS2 and GBA, as well as its sequels Battle Nexus and Mutant Nightmares. Their most recent credit is Super Contra on the 360 as an art director. But with Joker defeated, that's that level done and over with. That boss rush can be a little rough, especially with the noob fights along the way. But thankfully, most of the bosses have a good enough locks that you can do with them to begin with that, even if you have to do it on one health bar, there are far worse versions of this exact type of thing in other games. From here, though, let's talk about the endings. The endings don't really vary that much from difficulty to difficulty, but they vary enough in the dialogue that I'm actually showing all 3. They all start with a conversation with Alfred that goes a different way, and from there what happens depends on which difficulty you're going into. So for right now, let's start off with the easy mode ending. All stages cleared. Congratulations. Congratulations, Master Bruce. You have saved Gotham City, for the time being, at least. I hope so, Alfred. But it was too easy. I can't believe that they would let me capture them so easily. I can't rest until I know that I have defeated them for good. Very admirable indeed, sir. And then the credits play, And at the end, we are given this image and your score and a now challenge normal mode indicator. So from here, let's talk about the normal mode ending. This is where they actually throw things together a little differently. Congratulations, Master Bruce. I knew you'd be victorious. I'm sure those villains won't be so foolish as to try again. If I may say so, sir, it seems that the things were too easy for you. Perhaps you can think of another way to challenge yourself? Yes, I know, Alfred. I can't stop now. I can never rest until justice is served. So not only do we get different text, we also get a different sequence where they give us a cast call of the villains. We also get this in the hard mode ending, which is why I'm speeding this up. But we're also going to get the same image at the end. This is, of course, because I played on normal mode throughout the LP up to this point, the ending I got in the main recording. But after the main recordings were done, I went and played through easy and hard mode each just to showcase them. I played on normal mode mostly because I find it the most satisfying to play. As you get a good amount of lives, you can get continues here and again, but you at least also have access to the password option, which I forget if I mentioned that earlier in the LP. That's actually the main reason I didn't play on hard mode overall. In the case I say got a game over, I wouldn't be able to use a password to get back there. I'd have to play the entire game over again. And for recording's sake, for the main part of the game at least, I didn't really like the idea of that. So at the end, we're given the same image as we were in easy mode, but now there's a now challenge hard mode text. So from there, let's take a look at the hard mode ending and see what it changes to what we've already seen, why don't we? Magnificent, Master Bruce. Gotham City is free from the evil influence of those scoundrels. Yes, Alfred. I don't think they'll be bothering us again. But we must always be on guard. You never know when an enemy might reappear. Yes, Master Bruce. But you'll worry about that when the time comes, won't you? You bet I will. And that's the Adventures of Batman and Robin 1994. I'll be probably getting to at least the Genesis game at a later point down the line, because that's also a really interesting little one. This is a pretty kick-ass little licensed game for the Super Nintendo. There are some stages that really suck, like the Two-Face one, of course. But this game has a lot of really high highs, just that the lows are very notable. It's a fun little, almost spiritual successor to the Sunsoft game back on the NES, and I appreciate it a lot for that. With that said, because of the few pain-in-the-ass stages this game really has, I don't find myself going back to it that often. I do find myself going back to the Genesis game a little more often, or especially, you know, the Sunsoft game on the NES. But chalk that up for another good one under the Caped Crusader's good track record for video games. Or at least a better track record, because there's some stinkers for him, don't get me wrong. Hell, the Super Nintendo has some of the more famous ones, given Batman Forever. But yeah, I really recommend this one if you want to give it a shot. I do think in terms of the Batman games on the Super Nintendo, Returns is easier to get into, but that's because it's ultimately just a beat-em-up with some cool things going on and a kick-ass soundtrack, which, again, most of the same people did this one in that regard. Now, something I can't tell, because it's been long enough since I watched animated series for longer than like an episode at a time, I genuinely can't tell if most of this soundtrack is music just out from the show or not. I think there's some original tunes in here all the same, though. With that said, the adaptation of the Danny Elfman theme is just clearly ripped from the show. Hell, the title screen theme is literally the first opening from Season 1 of the show. The next time we're gonna see Batman on the channel, assuming I don't tackle, like, any of the remaining Super Nintendo or NES games I haven't done yet, or the Genesis version of this to begin with, is probably going to be me finally leaping into the Arkham series with Arkham Asylum, because I've been meaning to tackle those games for a while. Similarly to how I had Final Fight on that list for a good while, I've had Arkham on there since the day I wrote that list, effectively. Upon finishing the game on hard mode, though, we are given a radically different image as well. That's some kick-ass sprite work. Again, this game is gorgeous. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, have a great night, take care, and I'll see you guys next Let's Play, whatever that may be. See you guys then.